In this video, we are going to talk about ICP, some of its recent price action, the important support and resistance areas, and where we can expect the price of ICP to go in the next few days and weeks. So we'll start by looking at the weekly chart, and what we can see right here is that ICP is still very clearly in a downtrend. ICP has been in a downtrend since 2024. More recently, in the last couple of months, we've seen ICP start to consolidate right here since February. This is of course in correlation with Bitcoin getting its relief rally. Back in February, Bitcoin went all the way down to 60k, and then it got a rally to over 80k. But then recently, just in the last couple of weeks, Bitcoin got a very violent dump from over 80k all the way back down to 60k. ICP is actually slightly higher than when it was back in February, so it is actually holding on quite well. And you could even say that it has gotten a bit of a rally since February, but really it's not very significant, and in the longer term, it is still very clearly in a downtrend. Really, ICP is currently below every single support area that it had in the past few years. The only support area it has below this consolidation area that is at $2 is this one from the October liquidation event at $1.2. ICP only hit that area for literally just a few minutes back when we had a very brief crash for the entire crypto market. So other than that, ICP is basically holding on to its all-time low, trying not to create new lows. Just now in the last few days, Bitcoin got a bit of a rally from 60 to about 64k. It is starting to recover a bit. Bitcoin has been very oversold for a while now, and the dump is now slowing down since it hit the support area of 60k, which is the low from February. And ICP has also been recovering a tiny bit just in the last couple of days, but still the trend is very clearly a downtrend, and in my opinion, we are most likely still in a bear market for Bitcoin and the entire crypto market. And if that is true and Bitcoin continues to dump further below 60k, then the chances for ICP to continue holding onto this support area are very slim, and it will most likely head below $2 and continue to create lower lows. So I can't say that I'm too optimistic about ICP on the weekly chart. Also guys, if you are enjoying these updates and you are getting any value from them, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel more than you think, and it allows me to continue making more of these videos. And now let's go ahead and look at the 4-hour chart. And here we can see this move that I talked about from the last few weeks. ICP got a bit of support from this support area from back in March. There is also another support area that is a bit more significant at $2. This is of course a round number, which means it is a psychological area of support, and also we've seen ICP get support from there twice in February. So this seems to be a pretty significant area of support. So even if ICP continues dumping a bit further, it could get a bit of a rally from this area of $2. So in the last couple of months for ICP, the trend is not so clear. It is more of a consolidation. We've seen ICP rally all the way up to $4, which is a rally of about 2x since the lows in February. But then it very quickly got a very significant dump following Bitcoin's dump, of course, and it is now all the way back down at $2.37. Now, if we look at ICP against Bitcoin, we can see that back in late 2025, ICP has been very significantly outperforming Bitcoin. It got a massive rally, but then very quickly also dumped all the way back down. And since then, it has mostly been consolidating. The ICP to Bitcoin ratio has not moved that much. There have been some rallies and dumps, but really it is at the same level that it was all the way back in 2025. In general, what I think is that most altcoins will most likely underperform Bitcoin in the coming months, since I still think that we are most likely in a bear market. Even if Bitcoin continues to get another relief rally, I still think that in the long term it will break down below 60k most likely, and we will continue to be in a bear market for most of 2026 at the very least. And if that does happen, then I am expecting most altcoins to underperform Bitcoin. This is what usually happens in bear markets historically. For us to see altcoins as a whole outperforming Bitcoin and an altcoin season, we first need to see Bitcoin getting into new all-time highs, which is still very far away from being the reality in the market. Bitcoin is about 50% down from its all-time high, and I think that it will most likely get even lower than that. So the chances for an altcoin season are very slim in my opinion, and we will most likely see most altcoins underperforming Bitcoin quite significantly later into 2026. ICP has actually been holding on quite well since 2025, but I think that still in the long term it will most likely also underperform Bitcoin. In the very long time frame, it is still in a clear downtrend. As you can see, if we zoom out to all the way back in 2024, we can see that ICP against Bitcoin is still very clearly in a downtrend. Even from before that, since all the way back in 2021 or so, ICP has been performing very poorly compared to Bitcoin. So of course, this is not financial advice whatsoever, but I am personally not optimistic about ICP and most altcoins, and I think that Bitcoin will probably outperform most of the crypto market. And also the structure for ICP specifically is not looking very good in my opinion, so I would personally avoid it at the moment. And also guys, if you are enjoying these videos and you want more updates about ICP as well as other altcoins and the entire crypto market as a whole, make sure to subscribe. It helps the channel way more than you think, and I will appreciate it very much, and it allows me to continue to create these updates. And now looking at Bitcoin, we can see that it has gotten a very significant and quick dump from 82k all the way down to less than 60k, and it reached this area of the low from February again at around 60k, and since then it has gotten a bit of a recovery. In my opinion, it is quite likely that Bitcoin will continue to get a bit of a relief rally, since it is very oversold currently. As I showed you in some previous videos, the RSI for Bitcoin is currently at incredibly oversold levels, and also Bitcoin just hit the support area of 60k. If we draw a trend line from these two recent highs, we can see that a reasonable target for this relief rally by Bitcoin is around 70 to 75k. I think it's quite likely that in the short term, Bitcoin will get a rally all the way up to this trend line again, and then continue dumping from there and continue the bear market later into 2026 and probably head significantly below 60k. I think that we will most likely not bottom anytime soon, and it will probably take a few more months at the very least for us to start a bull market again. So again, in the short term, this means for ICP a bit of a relief rally is possible, but in the long term, it makes the chances of a rally for ICP in the long term very slim, with us still most likely being in a bear market, and also with the price structure of ICP being very bearish, as I showed you before. And also, as I said, in general, I think that most altcoins will underperform Bitcoin, at least for the next few months, while we are still in a bear market. Also, if we look at this chart of total 3 minus USDT against Bitcoin, which is basically a chart that shows the ratio of the entire altcoin market compared to Bitcoin and how altcoins are performing compared to Bitcoin, we can see that historically, for us to get an altcoin season like we got back in 2021 and 2017, we first need to see this ratio, this chart, go all the way down to about 0.25, and currently we are at 0.39, which is very far above this critical support area, and it is also very clearly still in a downtrend. And in my opinion, we will most likely see this chart continue to bleed and altcoins underperforming Bitcoin in the coming months, at the very least, possibly even for a couple of years, until we can really consider an altcoin season. It would require for this chart to first get to the support area, and also for Bitcoin to get into new all-time highs. So this could take a very long time, and in my opinion right now the chances of an altcoin season are very, very slim, and I would avoid being heavy into altcoins. Again, this is not financial advice whatsoever, but that's what I would personally think, and I would only maybe consider being into some altcoins that have a very good structure just in the short term, just for some short-term trades really. I don't think that any altcoins are a long-term investment, definitely not at the moment, and I would stick to mostly being into Bitcoin and maybe a bit of Ethereum at most, despite altcoins actually outperforming Bitcoin in the last few weeks. I think that this rally will not be sustained, and we will most likely see altcoins continue to underperform Bitcoin in the long term. Again, it's hard to predict what will happen in the shorter term once we see Bitcoin getting this relief rally, most likely to 70 to 75k. As I showed you on the Bitcoin chart before, it is possible maybe that altcoins continue to outperform Bitcoin for a while, just for a few more weeks. It's possible that Bitcoin actually gets the rally and altcoins stay in place. This is not as relevant in my opinion, and I think that it's a lot more important to understand that in the longer term, it is most likely that altcoins will significantly underperform Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is the strongest asset in the entire crypto market, really most of the time, other than some very specific periods of an altcoin season like we've seen in previous cycles, which, as I said, seems very unlikely to me to happen anytime soon. Really anytime in 2026, honestly. And now, if we look at the page of ICP on CoinMarketCap, we can see that the community sentiment, according to 173,000 votes, is 81% bullish. This is not unusual. We've seen most altcoins have about 75 to even over 90% of voters being bullish, so 81% is not anything special. And really, in the shorter time frame, maybe I could see ICP getting a bit of a recovery, since I am expecting Bitcoin to probably get a recovery in the coming weeks, but even then it's not guaranteed whatsoever. And in the longer time frame, I am definitely not bullish about ICP. As I showed you before, the price structure is looking pretty horrible, and also in general I'm quite bearish about altcoins as a whole. So I would have to disagree with this community sentiment. Really, most of the voters are just being quite blindly bullish, and people are voting over 80% bullish on most altcoins for not much reason, in my opinion. And we continue seeing altcoins just dumping further and further in recent months since the all-time high of Bitcoin and even since before that. So I would have to disagree with this. And now let's look at the total crypto fear and greed index. This is currently at 16, which is a bit into extreme fear. I've talked about this fear and greed index most likely going into extreme fear sometime pretty soon in previous videos, since I was expecting Bitcoin to head all the way back down to 60k and potentially even lower than that. Honestly, it happened quicker than I expected. We've seen this fear and greed index go from the mid 30s all the way down to 15 in just a couple of weeks. This is, of course, since we've seen Bitcoin get the dump from 82k to 60k very, very quickly. This is quite typical actually in bear markets, that dumps happen very fast while counter trend rallies happen quite slowly. We've seen Bitcoin rally from 60 to 82k over a few months and then dump from 82k all the way back down to 60k in just a couple of weeks. This is actually quite typical for bear markets, since the overall trend in a bear market is of course downwards. Dumps tend to happen far quicker than rallies. As I showed you before on the Bitcoin chart, I think that a bit of a relief rally for Bitcoin to a bit over 70k is quite likely sometime in the next few weeks. So this fear and greed index could head all the way back up into the neutral area, but I think that in the long term we'll most likely see Bitcoin heading below 60k, and that's continuing to be in a bear market for most of 2026. And if that does happen, then it is quite likely that we will be in extreme fear for a prolonged period of time. So if that does happen, don't be too surprised and don't get too fearful and start panic selling or anything. This is just what happens with crypto. This is what happens in bear markets. This doesn't mean that crypto is dead. And remember that we will most likely get another bull market like we've gotten in all previous cycles. Bitcoin is a long-term play. Again, not financial advice whatsoever, but just make sure not to panic or start making any rash decisions. And now let's look at the altcoin season index. This is currently at 48, which means neither Bitcoin or altcoin season really. This means that the Bitcoin has been performing right in the middle of the top 100 altcoins for the past 90 days. As I showed you on the total 3 minus USDT against Bitcoin chart, altcoins have actually been outperforming Bitcoin for a few weeks. But again, in my opinion, this is only a counter trend rally, and in the long term, as we continue going into this bear market, I think that most altcoins will significantly underperform Bitcoin, and that this will go further and further into Bitcoin season in the coming months. It is very hard to predict what's going to happen in the next few weeks, but in the longer time frame, what's important to understand, in my opinion, is that most likely Bitcoin will outperform most altcoins, and that we will not see an altcoin season anytime soon. So as I said, I would avoid being heavy into altcoins. I would also avoid ICP at the moment. Again, not financial advice whatsoever, but that's what I personally think. And that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it and you want more updates about ICP as well as other altcoins and the entire crypto market, make sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.